Readers Entertainment Radio presents Booklights with your host, author Lisa Kessler. Booklights, where we're shining a light on good books.
Hello, everyone. It's Monday. This last week felt like 100 years, but I'm so glad that you're tuned in with us to talk about books, right? And today is kind of a departure from our usual novels, and I'm super excited for you to meet Laura Marks. She's actually a comic book author, and there's a brand new compilation out that we're going to talk about. So thanks for being here today. If you guys have never read Laura yet, it's possible because I think this is her debut comic, but she has quite a background. So let me read her bio for you. Laura Marks is a PEN Award-winning playwright, television writer, and comic book writer. Her plays Bethany and Mine have garnered acclaim from critics and been published and produced across the U.S. and overseas. For TV, she has written episodes of The Good Fight, The Expanse, Servant, Ray Donovan, The Exorcist, and Brain Dead, and she's currently co-writing a project with Carlton Cuse. Her debut comic series for DC's Hill House Comics, so that's Joe Hill, Daphne Byrne, with art by Kelly Jones, has been released as a hardcover compilation just this month. And she lives with her husband and two daughters in Brooklyn, and I did put a link to her website right there on the Blog Talk site. So if you're listening live or listening to a podcast later, you can click that anytime and get to know her a little better. So without any delay, Laura, you there?
I am.
Yay, I'm so glad you could be here. Your publicist sent me a copy of the book, and oh my gosh, it looks fantastic, and the art is great. And what do you want to tell people about it so they go grab it this week?
Oh, well, I guess I'll just sort of tell you, I'll tell you where it's set. It's set in 1886 in New York City, so it's kind of that Gilded Age that Henry James and Edith Wharton wrote about. It's called Daphne Byrne because that's the title character, the main character. Daphne is, she's 14 years old, and she's kind of this lonely misfit girl who has just lost her father, who was the only person who ever really got her. She's an only child, and the other girls at school think she's a little weird because she's an intellectually curious girl, you know, with a scientific mind, which was not very cool back then if you were a girl. And her father died in disgrace. Her mother can't pay their debts. You know, none of this makes you very popular at school in 1886. And her mother is not handling the loss of her father very well at all. And she comes home and says, you know, Daphne, I found a medium, a spiritualist, and so we can talk to Papa now. And Daphne goes, oh, well, you know, I mean, she's a naturally skeptical girl, but she's intrigued and willing to give it a go. But she gets to the seance and then very quickly realizes this is all a scam. But while she's sitting there in the seance, she does have this odd sensation that comes over her that she can't quite explain. It's almost as if some kind of spirit is latching onto her. And then later that night, this young boy comes to her. He's about her age. He never gives his name, but he tells her, think of me as a brother. And so that's what she calls him. And then he begins to show her this very different world. It's kind of this underworld that exists just cheek by jowl with her own world. And through him and through this other world, she begins to realize that she's far more powerful than she ever imagined. And while all of this is going on, Daphne's mother is getting more and more intertwined with this spiritualist group, which turns out to actually have very sinister intentions. So Daphne is struggling to save her own mother while also dealing with this strange entity, this brother guy who's taken up residence in her mind. And she's not really sure, and we're not really sure, if he is some kind of supernatural force, or is he really just a projection of some kind of darkness that was inside her all along, which is something I kind of wanted to play with. I think that's always really interesting, those stories when you don't know, am I going crazy or am I having a supernatural experience, which is something I think all of us have been asking ourselves in 2020, right?
Right, exactly. So I wonder, I write novels, but I'm very curious about comics. They want it to be a series also, right? Is this going to be like a long-running series for you?
Oh, they were really just intended to be limited series. A 6-issue comic that could then be collected as a graphic novel, which is what it is now. It's sort of like Pinocchio grew up and became a real graphic novel, you know. So it's a hardcover that collects these 6 issues that were published monthly in softcover. And, you know, it's got an open ending, so if we ever wanted to continue it, we certainly could. But also, I just wanted to write something that would stand on its own and just be a fun story.
And I didn't know that there were horror comics. Is this new? Is this a new Joe Hill thing, or has this been going on for a long time?
I think there's been horror comics about as long as there have been comics, but this particular imprint, Hill House Comics, is something that Joe just started fairly recently. So there are, I believe, 5 titles out now as hardcover compilations of these first 5 series that he has curated for DC. And it's a wide range of different time periods and settings and sort of subgenres of horror, but they're all horror, and they're all I got to say, I think they're all pretty, I'm in some really good company. Joe wrote 2 of the titles, M.R. Carey wrote one of them, and then Carmen Maria Machado wrote one of them. And she, like me, is a first-time comic writer, so we have bonded a bit over that.
Nice. And have you ever written, when I was reading your bio, most of the TV shows, I think, are contemporary time period. Have you ever written a historical before? How was the research hole for that?
Oh, the research was so fun. I mean, that's really, you know, when this opportunity came about, and I should sort of explain, so this happened because I was working in a developmental room for a show that actually didn't end up happening, but through that I ended up meeting Joe Hill and getting to know him and reading this series that he wrote called Lock and Key, which is a beautiful graphic novel series of very character-driven horror about a family, you know, a lot of amazing, fantastical elements, but also very dark and scary. And that really ignited something in me, like, wow, I see that comics are a fantastic vehicle for this kind of horror, this kind of really kind of rich, elevated, character-driven horror. And gosh, I would really like to write something like that one day in this medium. And as luck would have it, some months later, Joe just emailed me out of the blue and said, hey, have you ever thought about writing a horror comic? Because I'm curating this new line for DC, and what do you think? And, you know, instantly it was oh my God, yes, of course, I would love to. Let me see if I can come up with an idea really quickly. And the first thing I thought of was doing something period, because like you said, that's something I've never gotten to do in television, but always kind of wanted to do, because a lot of what I love to read is 19th century writers. I'm a huge Bronte fan, and you know, M.R. James ghost stories, and you know, I just sort of, I love a lot of those writers, and I think they're fun to read. So I thought, well, this is the perfect chance to get this out of my system, because I'm always a little hesitant to pitch something period if I'm trying to come up with a TV idea, because people say, oh, it's going to be really expensive. You know, you got to hire the horse and carriage and sew the bodice and whatever. But in comics, nothing costs any more to draw than anything else. So I thought this is perfect. Plus, it would be a really rich visual world for an artist to dig into. And as luck would have it, they paired me with this artist, Kelly Jones, who is a DC Comics legend. He's done a lot of really iconic work on Batman and Swamp Thing, then a bunch of fantastic horror work as well. So he is like this old school, like, does these incredibly rich, detailed backgrounds. Every panel is just chock full of detail and subtext, and just so I can't even imagine a better artist for this story. So he was like, yes, I'd love to do something in that world as soon as he read the pitch. And then we were off and running. Well, not exactly, because I had to think, well, what kind of character do I want to write about? What kind of story do I want to write? But really the setting came first, and then it was like, oh, I know exactly what I want to write in this setting. I want to write, I think my favorite kind of protagonist to write actually is kind of an anti-heroine, you know. I love a female protagonist who carries the whole story on her back and has a really big, high-stakes problem. But if she's a little messy, I think that's really fun, you know, like you're not quite sure, is she a heroine or maybe like a little bit of a monster. And So I wanted to do a version of that, but highly sympathetic, and you're rooting for her and you're feeling for her and all of that, hopefully. And this is a younger protagonist than I've ever written before, but I have 2 teenage girls in the house right now, so it seemed like kind of a natural fit.
Right? Yeah. And I love the I got my start in horror and then branched out toward more paranormal romance, but I love that time period is the perfect for spooky things because they didn't have quite as much science to debunk things, and you didn't have to worry about getting rid of cell phones or that kind of stuff. So did you get to play with that, with the spookiness just of that time period? I think of Something Wicked This Way Comes. Everyone was so innocent and anything could be real back then, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, well, the quality of light is different. You just have such great, you have gaslight, you have candlelight, and another thing that was useful is the way that, I wanted to write a story that was kind of about female rage in a way. And you look at a woman in the 1880s, she's got a lot to be pissed off about, I mean,
right.
I mean, today we
but
do
no
also.
outlet.
Right, yeah. It's like,
they didn't
a
have
14-year-old mystic girl, she can't, go online and find her tribe. I mean,
right?
She really is just completely isolated. So, just the rules that they had to abide by and the stuff they had to wear and the sort of mold of conventional femininity they had to fit into, and also the fact that they just didn't have the ability to earn money and take care of themselves. And I mean, at one point in the book, Daphne wants to check out a library book. They won't even let her do that. So I think that the setting kind of helps you, at least it helps me, empathize with her more because you see what she's up against. And I don't know, I just think things look cool in that environment, the way that Kelly, the way that he draws that world, it's kind of just seductively beautiful. And so then you have all this sort of over-the-top luxury, and right next to it you've got just horror and gore and whatever's going on in the street. And I think those juxtapositions are really fun.
For sure. And I always ask when people are on, because it's so interesting, everyone's different background that led them to becoming a writer. And for you, did you always know? Did you always go, I want to write a TV show? Or, what led you down this path? What did it look like for you?
Oh, that's funny. Well, weirdly, I think even before I could really read, I knew I wanted to be a writer. Because my mom would read me the Peanuts comics. And I was like, well, what's Snoopy doing with the typewriter on top of the doghouse? And she explained it to me. And as soon as I understood that was a job, I was like, that's my thing, You
were going to grow up and be Snoopy. I
was going to grow up and be Snoopy. What could be better than making up stories in your head and writing them down? However, it's hard to sort of believe that you can really pull that off. So as luck would have it, I knocked around doing a lot of things. I was an actor for a while. I worked a bunch of survival jobs, ended up in New York City. And it wasn't really, strangely, it wasn't until I was pregnant with my first child, and I was, momentarily sidelined from acting. And this friend of mine who was a director said, you should really write a play. I mean, you're always writing, and, the theater is a world. Why aren't you writing a play? You're pregnant. You're not going out for any auditions except Palmer's cocoa butter commercials, And and so I was like, well, yeah, okay. And then suddenly it was like a light switch flipped, and I was like, of course, this is what I was always supposed to be doing. Why was I wasting my time doing anything else? This is exactly it. So I started writing in earnest, and I think it's probably not a coincidence that it happened around the time I became a mom, because I just love to write about really high-stakes situations, and when you become a parent, the stakes in your life immediately become so much higher. You've got this little creature that's dependent upon you that you've got to take care of and protect, and it just reorganizes your whole world. And for me, it just unlocked something where I was suddenly accessing the kinds of stories I wanted to tell that felt screen-worthy or stage-worthy, or in this case, comic-worthy. And then it was all about writing plays for a while. I went to graduate school here in New York for playwriting, and And then I wrote this one play. I guess a lot of the plays that I've written tend to be more kind of thriller or something in that, I like a high-stakes situation, as you know. But I wrote this one play that was a little more psychological horror, and then people kind of looked at that and went, it's a genre piece. I bet she could write television. So I think a lot of playwrights are getting recruited to write for television these days, and it's lovely because it comes with health insurance, which is great.
Yay!
Yeah, I know. Playwriting doesn't come with health insurance. It gives you the lovely instant gratification of a live audience, but
health insurance is really
health
important.
Insurance is it's pretty sweet. So yes, I joined the ranks of playwrights writing for television, and my first staffing job was on this show called Brain Dead, created by the Kings, who created The Good Wife and later The Good Fight, which I'm also working on now. And it was a horror satire about Washington, D.C., in which alien bugs were eating the brains of the U.S. senators. So that was just a hilarious sort of freewheeling introduction to the world of TV writing, and it was so much fun to sit around that table every day making up stories with people. I would come home and I would go, wow, I'm really glad I get to do this. And I still feel that way. I still love just sitting around a table and collaborating with a bunch of other writers and making up stories and writing them on whiteboards and then going away and hashing it out and writing a script. It's a fun way to work. Although, this comic, while it's also collaborative because you're working with an artist and editors and a colorist and a letterer and all that stuff, it was much more of a solitary process, like go away into your cave and come back with something, which was also a nice change of pace.
Yeah, wasn't it fun you get to be God and you don't have all that extra input? It's just your baby. Was that fun for you?
It was. Because in TV, you listen, even if you're the showrunner and it's your show, you are always going to be beholden to the network notes and the studio notes and what the star thinks and also just the vagaries of production, like, oh, crap, it rained and we didn't get to get that scene. So, to have something where it could just really be my own voice unfiltered through any of that was really, really enjoyable, which is why I did it, I suppose.
Yeah, because I write novels and I really enjoy, all the power, the godlike power of creating your world and all your stuff. And when you talk about TV writing, I always cringe. I'm like, having 10 other people have a say in my thing. No.
Oh, yes, and can rewrite you freely, which is great if they're doing a good job, and they usually do. But it is a very different experience. It's a bit like Zen sand paintings, I suppose, although I've never made a Zen sand painting. But this idea of I'm just going to make it as beautiful as I possibly can, knowing that the wind will blow it away, and that's okay,
Right.
Yeah. But I still feel a tremendous pride of ownership in anything that I've contributed to on TV, whether it's, in a way that was big or small, whether your name is on it or not. It's great fun to collaborate with people, especially once you get involved in production and you're really seeing the actors say your words. That is pretty exciting.
Yes, I would think that would be really cool. Just getting audiobooks and hearing them, bring the characters to life of my novels is like, whoa, what is that you're like, wow, I didn't even realize that was in there, but there it is. So can imagine, I can imagine being a playwright. That must have been so cool to see your stuff up there and get the instant, audience reaction to it would be fantastic.
I mean, fantastic and terrifying. That's true. I felt so much more exposed sitting in an audience as a playwright than I ever felt as an actor, no matter what I was doing up there. It's really like, oh Jesus, people are seeing the inside of my brain. This is bad.
I never thought about it. That's true. I never have to sit there when readers are reading my books. So.
No, never. But what if you were like on the subway and you looked over
there.
and somebody was reading it?
Yeah, that
would you go up to them and say, "Oh, hey, that's me," or would you just sort of slink away?
Wasn't that part funny? No.
Yeah.
Did that part scare you? Oh. When I was just starting writing, I had a friend who was much more experienced than I, and I would rush about details and things when I was writing, and the editors would always nail me on it. And I was complaining one day, and she gave me this amazing advice that said, you don't get to travel with your book. You can't tell people what it meant. I'm like, oh, that is some dynamite advice.
That is a really good point. Yes. I feel like, we all get notes as writers in whatever medium we're working in, and there is always that like, oh, they just don't get it kind of response that,
right.
Your inner child wants to have or whatever. But there's almost always a reason that they're giving that note, and even if they can't articulate exactly what it is, there's something there to dig in and find, and yeah, people know.
Yeah, I totally
feel
agree.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. They don't know why, but something's not right there. I agree. So what's next for you? Did you have so much fun that now you're going to write more comics, or what's next on your schedule?
Oh, I don't know. I did have a great time, but it would have to be the stars would have to align just right, I suppose. But I'm going back into the writer's room for The Good Fight, which is this show on CBS All Access that I've worked on the past couple of seasons. It's a spin-off of The Good Wife, but it's because it's for streaming and not network, it goes to some much more inventive and elaborate places, I think, than its parent show. So that's great fun to work on. And I just finished a stint working on Servant, which is this, speaking of horror, this M. Night Shyamalan produced show that is on Apple TV+. So the second season of that hasn't come out yet. The first season aired. The second season had to take a hiatus due to COVID, but so we were writing the third season, which Lord knows when that'll come out because they stopped releasing the second season. Just developing some other TV projects and what have you. I'm co-writing this project with Carlton Cuse, which I can't say too much about, but if it goes, it would be so great. Funnily enough, it's also about a teenage girl in a fantastical world, but it's much more hopeful than Daphne Byrne, not nearly as dark. But yeah, so I guess it's mostly TV stuff to keep that health insurance going.
Right.
And yeah. But Daphne Byrne was so much fun to work on with Kelly, and I have to also give a shout out to Michelle Madsen, our colorist. I think that she just nails the colors of that period so well. And Rob Lee, the letterer. I hadn't realized how impactful all of these different elements are until you're actually working with these folks, and you realize, oh, gee, now that I'm seeing that line in the lettering, it doesn't quite look right against the picture. I think I need to rewrite that line, how all of these different elements come into play in a medium that is so visual, so much more so than just prose. But, I guess screenwriting is very visual, too, and that was what was super exciting about comics, is that it's almost like you're getting to storyboard your screenplay in a way. And you get to specify what goes in every panel, and you can even have a dialogue with the artist about what angle and this and that. And so it kind of felt at times like I was getting to direct as well as write, which was so exciting. And I have this amazing cinematographer in Kelly Jones who was rendering it, and that Kelly was also all of the actors in the piece because he was giving whatever expression needed to be on Daphne's face and her mother's face and this and that. And because he's so good at that, I feel like we were able to work in a little bit more of a filmic style than perhaps I would have with another artist, because I could be like, Kelly, I don't want her to say anything. I just want it all to be on her face. And he'd be like, okay, I got you. And he could draw that. And, those are some of my favorite moments on screen. It was fun to be able to play with that in comics as well.
That's so interesting. I hadn't even thought about that. But when you're writing a comic, do you have to write out a separate character sheet of how you're envisioning these people look, or does the artist get to decide how they look? Because I'm guessing in the small word count you have for a comic, you're not defending it going, she has brown hair, green eyes, and she's wearing a black turtleneck, right?
Right.
Or do you have a separate sheet with that?
No, I mean, the script can be much longer than the actual comic if you want. I mean, Neil Gaiman's scripts are incredibly long because he gets really just encyclopedic about what's, in every panel. You can describe as much as you want. I feel like with somebody of Kelly's caliber, I wanted to give him a lot of leeway to let his creativity, run riot. But what I did love doing was the period research, and I sent him pages and pages of, this is what her hair could look like if you want, or here's another version if you like this better. This is what she might be wearing. This is what the room might look like. This is what girls wore for their periods in 1886. I had to look that up. That's one of the more horrific things in my horror comic. So really it's down to Kelly for the most part, but we both shared this feeling of wanting to be as historically accurate as possible, albeit with poetic license, of course.
Right, with monsters and things.
Mm-hmm. Yes, with monsters and things. But the monsters are also, of course, historically accurate.
So while it's, I've been asking people, how you're dealing with writing during a pandemic and all that, and you have TV writing. I mean, do you guys all just Zoom now? Do you all work from home, or how is that working out for you?
Yep, it's all over Zoom. In fact, working for Servant, the entire job was conducted over Zoom from start to finish.
Wow.
Oh, God, this is going to be weird because, writing collaboratively, it's a pretty intimate experience, and I feel like a lot of it arises from those little in-between moments when you're eating lunch together or just sort of kibitzing, before work starts. And there's less of that with Zoom. However, I was surprised how quickly we were able to kind of feel that same kind of intimacy, even though most of us had never met in person. It was kind of cool, actually. I guess you just sort of, once you're doing the work together, you have to be intimately involved. There's really no choice.
Right.
So it just sort of falls into place. And Good Fight is also going to be over Zoom. At least that's how we'll start. And who knows when normal life will resume. I don't know. I just heard some news about a vaccine today. So,
I saw that too. I was like, but then I guess it still needs more trials, and then they have to figure out how to make enough for everybody. And I'm like, dang it, it's going to be a long time still.
Yeah, boy, this year, 2020 has been all about tempering expectations, hasn't it?
Yeah.
Let me just not get too excited about anything. Let me just,
Right.
But still, I'll take a little bit of encouraging news. It's definitely different, and I got to say, I have the greatest respect for the novelists like you who have to be more kind of self-starting every day and manage their own discipline because, TV writing, there's a little bit more of an imposed schedule, which makes things easier in a way,
Right. And deadlines are the only thing that make sure things happen.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Very, very true. And sometimes the tighter deadline, the better, sometimes that can be a real gift.
Right.
And complications or restrictions of any kind, I think, are a perverse kind of gift when you're trying to come up with something. I mean, comics, the strangest restriction there was that each issue had to be exactly 22 pages. You might be writing your script and you're like, oh, damn, I'm on page 18. I've got so much more to do. Okay, hang on. I gotta look at this all over again. This is a fun thing about comics that I never would have guessed, but thankfully, Joe Hill and all the great editorial team at DC, they were very generous with their guidance and information. They said, you want to have, if possible, anything that's really surprising or an oh my God moment, put that on an even numbered page, because as you're flipping through, you might see an odd numbered page casually, but you won't see an even numbered page until you've actually turned the page all the way over, and then you go, so that's where you want to put your surprises. Yeah. It's to give the reader, as they're physically interacting with the book, that visual and visceral experience. So there's all that stuff to kind of plan out as you're positioning the story on those 22 pages. And in a weird way, I feel like sometimes those kinds of rules and restrictions can make your job easier because you don't have as much space to sort of twist in the wind and worry about how to end something. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, because the ending is happening now.
Right.
Well, we're running out of time, but it has been so much fun to have you on here and give us like the behind the scenes of comics. And I've seen the comic, and it's so fantastic. So everyone needs to go and grab Daphne Byrne, and it's on Amazon and probably at Barnes & Noble and everything too, right?
Yep, or Bookshop if you want to support your local bookseller. I'm sure they would be grateful for any support during this time. I think Amazon's probably doing okay. It's like COVID is a good time to be Amazon. But yeah, the independent bookshops are really needing our support right now too.
Yes. And I did put a link to Laura's website right there, so click on that, and that has buy links also for the graphic novel. And thanks so much for being here. It was great talking to you.
Oh, lovely talking to you. Thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for joining us on Booklights. Be sure to connect with us at www.readersentertainment.com for articles, blogs, videos, and podcasts that matter to readers.